Skerptards, beware. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents and Skerptards! Woo! To your Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10x10x10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. And we have, as always, the Watcher with us today. How you doing out there, buddy? Out there in space. You there, Watcher?
He's looking. He's watching walls.
There he is. Sweet. Yeah. We got a great show. We got the interview with Mrs. Patty Knupp from Rockwall for this episode. Do we have any news? Do we have any space news? Do we have any space weather? What's going on?
Solar activity is at a minimum. There are no spots right now. But I was looking at the corona earlier. It looks like there's some action going on the other side of the sun. And there's been some earthquakes.
The atmosphere of the sun is made of beer.
Corona. Yeah, there was a bunch of earthquakes off of the coast of Oregon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was like a 5.6 magnitude.
Ooh.
Yeah, and, you know, they're like, there's some massive fault out there, and they're like, basically this could be a sign that a big, massive earthquake is going to happen in the near future. But this is normal activity, so nobody needs to worry about it.
Yeah. Just like with Yellowstone, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing like all these hundreds and hundreds of earthquakes, but it's totally normal. Don't anybody worry.
Yeah.
Don't anybody. Yeah.
But at the time, I'm listening to Forgotten Civilization.
Yeah.
Again by Robert Schoch, and I was at a part where he was talking about the coronal mass ejections and CME, basically disturbances.
Yeah.
When they hit the Earth, they can actually cause earthquakes, and there's a lot of evidence for it.
Right. Sunquakes.
And even minor ones, like ones that we get hit with on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah.
Not ones that will catch every single building on fire and blow up every gas station. But just the normal ones. They have been correlated with pretty large earthquakes. So that's why I checked out the sun.
Okay.
And it doesn't look like has been any like major sunspot activity. But there's still some weird coronal activity going on, but it's not facing us. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I couldn't find a correlation.
Okay. I did have a.
But
let's
I really
see.
wanted to, guys.
I really wanted to.
I was doing serious research.
Okay, I have this from spaceweather.com. It says, the solar wind has arrived. As predicted, a stream of solar wind has enveloped Earth on July 24th with wind speeds near 600 kilometers per second.
Yes, I read that too in the solar site.
Yeah. First contact with the stream sparked a brief outburst of summertime auroras over Canada. An anticipated G1 class geomagnetic storm has yet to materialize, but it is too soon to rule out such a storm. The gaseous material is flowing from a broad hole in the sun's atmosphere, so broad that Earth will remain inside the stream for 2 or 3 more days.
That's what it was. It was that Schoch was talking about the aurora action has been correlated to earthquakes. So that's why. All right. So maybe there is a connection.
Yes, there is. Lunar eclipse and Martian conjunction, Friday, July 27th, is a big night for astronomy. 3 beautiful things will be happening almost simultaneously. First, Mars will be at opposition, directly opposite the sun, and making a 15-year close approach to Earth. Second, Mars and the full moon will be in conjunction, less than 10 degrees apart. Third, the moon will pass through the shadow of Earth, producing the longest lunar eclipse in a century.
Yeah.
Almost everyone on Earth except North Americans can see the eclipse as the sunset-colored shadow of our planet follows the moon for almost 2 hours. Dang it! Almost everyone on Earth except us. Shit.
Yeah, I was really mad about that.
Yeah.
No, I'm just really sad about that.
During totality, the moon will turn almost the same red color as Mars right beside it. An incredible sight that we can't see.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great. Done for space.
Blood moon. Blood moon.
Super blood moon. So the other thing I have to, before we get into the interview, there is a couple of really good comments on the blog that I wanted to read.
Damn, I cannot do that.
Kyle, keep them entertained while I pull this up.
The Tuesday morning quakes were about 125 miles west of Gold Beach. I guess that's in Oregon. And occurred at a depth of 6.2 miles. They ranged in magnitude from 3.2 to 5.6.
Oh.
Hey, didn't I say 5.6?
Yeah, you did. You got it. Like,
Got a
totally
pretty good memory. Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Folks. Yeah.
That's good.
So I don't know what you're looking for, but anyways,
I was totally not
there.
prepared
Yeah,
for this.
the what was it? The sun. What is the coronal wind or whatever? What is it called? The wind from the sun.
The solar wind?
Magnetic sun wind. Giant wind magnets.
The solar wind?
Yeah, the solar wind. That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah, I read that. 500 something kilometers per second. That's ridiculous. We need to build a solar wind sailboat.
Yeah. Actually, there's great science fiction stories about that. Sun surfing, they call it. And basically, they have these enormous, you have giant, like, mylar sails and a little bitty tiny capsule, and you make it as light as possible, and then they all race, you know. And if you're like, if somebody's in front of you, you like tack your sail to get behind them, between them and the sun, so the shadow casts over them and their sail starts flapping and shit. And then and the sails are so huge that if it starts to flap, these giant waves are crossing the whole thing and it'll rip itself apart. And you're like, yeah,
you jerk! You ripped my sun sail.
You destroyed my sun sail. Okay, so last week you read a comment from Chris, what was his name? Chris Slusher, yeah. He also commented on the blog. He says, you guys recently brought up the Maori of New Zealand, and I was wondering if you had seen the documentary Skeletons in the Cupboard. It's free on YouTube, and it was made by two filmmakers, a couple from New Zealand, and it's riveting. They go through the history of the Maori and evidence of influence from ancient Persia and Egypt. They show their ancestors made their way all the way through the Pacific to Easter Island in South America. What's more, they talk about how when their ancestors arrived in New Zealand, they found fair-skinned people, red-haired giants, and people of extremely small stature. Anyway, hope this finds you and you check it out. I love it, and I love your podcast. Take it easy. Another great comment from Chris.
Heck yeah, I actually saved that in my YouTube playlist, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet either, but we are going to watch that, Chris, so thank you very much for that reference. Skeletons in the Cupboard, guys. Go check it out. The other comment I wanted to read was from Billy Haltmar. Dude, he says, you need to pitch this as a movie. Now, he's talking about episode 54, EM Fields and Ancient Technology, right? Where we're talking about, like, the possibility of the entire civilization being destroyed by an EMF.
Yeah.
And then everything catching on fire, and then I started talking about people eating each other, and then you guys were like, oh my God, Russ, shut up. That's gross, bro.
Basically, sun zombies.
So he says, dude, you need to pitch this as a movie. The power grid going offline, possibly by a solar flare, resulting in the horribly graphic shit Russ was talking about. But then the ancient technologies going back online around the world and people discovering the ancient technologies being united by following the messages they discovered. Then insert epic ending or leave people hanging to fight over how it ended. Or, dun dun dun, a sequel. Thanks, Billy. Great comments. He's also commented on a couple other articles, and he says to keep the puns coming, so we will definitely do that. So we have Patty Knupp with us today. She is from Rockwall, Texas, and we are going to interview her about the Rockwall in Rockwall, Texas. This is something like I feel like stories about Rockwall are all over the internet on various sites about alternative science or alternative history or archaeology. But it seems to me like no one has actually reached out to the people who live there and actually spoken to them and asked them, what they think and what they know. And that's what we're trying to do here. So the first thing I'd like to ask you, Patty, is like, what's the story? Like, tell us the story of the people who founded the town and found the rock wall. How did that happen?
Well, my husband is named David, and his great-grandfather was Terry Utley Wade, who came to Rockwall in 1851 from Kentucky. And in 1852, he and two other farmers, William Clay Stevenson and Benjamin Boydston, were digging a water well on Terry Utley Wade's property and hit something hard and couldn't continue digging, and so they moved up maybe 60 feet north and began digging again,
Okay.
and went ahead and dug their water well, and then later went back to see what they had hit, that they, couldn't dig the well any further.
Right.
And they found this rock wall, a wall of rock. And later, when they were trying to decide on the name of the town, several men wanted the town named after them. And so it was decided that instead of naming the town after a particular pioneer, they would name it after the rock wall that had been found here. And that was in 1852.
I cannot do that.
Wow.
And
Man, I wish I could find something like that when I was digging a well.
Yeah. So those
wasn't that fun?
Yeah.
those men, did they thought it was man-made, or do you know what they thought? I mean, it seems like
I
pretty
think at
significant to name the town.
They thought it was man-made, because back then they didn't have the scientific knowledge that they have now.
Right.
But the debate began pretty soon after the rock wall was found, whether it was natural or man-made,
Right.
and that debate continues today.
Yeah, it does. So okay, so from what I've read, they did try to get some people, or there were some masons, and I mean stonemasons, not, I don't know if they were like Freemasons, but they were masons that came and looked at it, and they said that it was man-made. Is that right? Is that accurate?
Well, there have been laymen and ministers and archaeologists and geologists and a physics professor and paleontologists and other scientists that have studied the rock wall for decades and decades. One was even from the Smithsonian.
Ah.
A lot of them from SMU in Arlington. Well, it's University of Texas at Arlington now.
Okay.
Used to be Arlington State.
Right.
In fact, when I was a kid growing up, about a mile from the original site of the rock wall, there would be scientists from SMU and also from Arlington State that would ask my father's permission to walk around our land to see if they could see any outcrops with the rock wall.
Okay, so
And,
I'm sorry. So that's okay. So that implies that, or that shows an actual academic interest in this. That's not really. That isn't really given in the internet stories. They try to portray it as like no one's interested. Everybody poo-poos it. They all think it's natural or whatever. But this is what you're saying is that like people have over time, across time or whatever, have come to look at it being interested in the idea of whether it's natural or man-made, like actually open to the possibilities at least. Is that right?
that's correct.
Oh,
Yes.
that's great.
Now,
Faith and
8 or
science
10
renewed.
Oh, 8 or 10 years ago, my husband, who is a Texas Aggie, called the head of the archaeology department at A&M and asked if they might be interested in a dig. And they were just beginning a dig in the hill country in central Texas.
Oh.
But he and David talked for a while, and he told David he had studied the rock wall, not in person, but he had studied the rock wall and thought it probably was a natural formation that very possibly prehistoric Indians had either used as it was or had taken the rocks from existing rock walls and made other rock walls, probably for protection or something.
Okay.
So they modified it.
Yeah.
Modified it, yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, is it okay? So there's also has been discussion that there were various features seen in it, like windows or at least portals through it, like doorways, arches, other decorative things that you wouldn't expect to see, like in a limestone formation. Is that also right?
Right, and there are some stories about being their drawings or words.
Oh.
The windows, monogrammed rocks. There are pictures of metal rings that were embedded in some of the rocks.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yes.
For hitching their dinosaurs up.
Well, could be. And also people that I know that I have known that have seen the rock wall in the past said that many of the rocks were beveled.
Ah.
And there was a mortar-like substance in between the rocks.
Okay.
So
That's awesome.
But it's funny you should mention dinosaurs, because I interviewed a lady, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, and she was in her 90s and had lived in Rockwall County her whole life. And I asked her what she thought, and she said that it was built by prehistoric people for protection from dinosaurs. And I did the same thing. I kind of snickered quietly and said, well, I didn't think that people and dinosaurs lived at the same time.
Right.
And she said, oh, they did.
Yeah.
She said, my mama said so, and my mama always was right. So there are people that think that it was for protection from dinosaurs.
Now, do you okay? So, do you think that
Take care.
it could have been what they called a megafauna, like previous to the end of the last ice age, like say 10 to 12,000 years ago, we had mammoths, mastodons, the American Pleistocene lion, which is like the size of a horse.
Right.
Saber-toothed cats. Like, I could totally see building a rock wall to protect you from giant pachyderms, elephants.
Well, and the Paleo Indians were hunting these giant animals.
That's right. Yeah.
And they very easily could have used something like this for protection.
Right. I mean, like, you got windows. You can. Well, I don't know if you want to shoot an arrow at a mammoth, but
Okay, that brings a question to mind. Have they? Sorry. So that makes me wonder. Have they excavated down, say, two sides of it? Like, you excavate down one side and you see all the rocks. Can you dig down on the other side of it, or is it a shelf, or is it an actual wall? Like, how thick is it?
Well, in certain places, I have heard that it's 2 to 4 feet thick.
oh, so it's a wall.
It is a wall,
Yeah.
not a shelf.
It is a wall. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was thinking, like, all this time that I've thought about Rockwall, I've only imagined one side.
One side.
and that makes it more like a retaining wall.
Yeah.
You know, if there's but if it's actually
Two-sided.
two-sided, then I don't. Seems extremely unlikely to be a natural formation.
Right.
To me.
That's very unlikely to be a natural formation to me as well.
Well, there are scientists say though that there are natural rock walls in southwest Arkansas and northeast Texas. But a lot of the scientists that don't think it's all natural think that the size of the rocks and the beveling couldn't be a natural feature.
Right. The beveling, especially, there is. I would even say that there is a possibility of what can be called a natural. No, it's not really natural, but like what would look like a natural mortar, like something that's underground for a long time will have seepage from above come down and sort of wash
fine sediments
in between, and it can look like a mortar. But beveling, that doesn't happen naturally. Somebody did that.
Right. And of course, that's how they, the scientists call these sandstone dikes,
Yeah.
and that's how they, get formed, is when water and sand and silt and other materials collect in a crack.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, that makes sense. But still, it doesn't get beveled.
No, it's not beveled. No. And also, the rock wall, the original rock wall that is on our property, runs north-south. And not very far from us, a section has been uncovered that runs east-west.
Okay, yeah, that's
And-
another.
I'm not sure that nature takes right turns like that.
That's right.
Oh, that would be-
or follows cardinal directions like north, south, east,
That
west.
would be really. It'd be really.
That's true.
Has anyone ever tried to measure the precision of the direction, like the actual, compared to the cardinal direction? Like they'll do this. They did this with the Great Pyramid, where they measured within how many hundredths of a degree or whatever it was.
Well, that's the
within-
question. Is it straight?
Yeah, it might not be straight. That's true.
Is it straight? Is it uniform? Like, does it get wider and thinner, or does it stay relatively the same thickness? Do you know any of that stuff?
That I don't know.
Okay. So, how do you know? Like, people have said that it's miles long. Do you know how long it might be, or you also said
Well-
something about there might being multiple ones there?
Yes, supposedly, well, the one on our property is the original one that was first found.
Right.
And they know that the actual wall is about 3.5 miles
Wow.
by 5 or 6 miles long.
Wow.
Man,
That's
And
Serious wall.
they're guessing that it covers 20 square miles or more.
man. That's a serious wall.
So,
Jericho in the
well, and it's
Americas.
in sections apparently. So,
Well, yeah, if it's really ancient, you would expect that. I mean, that any kind of shifting could have broken it up. But still, that's a big construction project.
So there's a couple of things. Like one observation I have is if something like this were to be found in the old world,
Yeah.
they wouldn't really. There would be much less debate over whether or not it was natural, because they expect to have extremely ancient megalithic construction in those areas of the world, because that's where they think the whole out of Africa theory. But
civilization started.
right, but over here they think humans didn't get here until they came across the ice bridge or whatever.
Yeah, the Bering Land Bridge. Yeah. And then they didn't build rock construction for a long time.
Right, but we don't really know. That's all theoretical, based on various different models of human development. But we think that it's possible that there were more advanced civilizations living previous to the known history of the peoples in the Americas, or at least we believe that that's likely.
Yeah.
Well, and we don't know how far north the Mayan Indians came.
That's right.
That's
We know
true.
that they were great builders, and the Indians that were here later didn't leave any evidence of using the rock wall, but that doesn't mean they didn't.
Right.
And there's been a lot of what they call colonial root cellars
Yeah.
discovered over in the Northeast that it's megalithic construction, huge slabs of stone built with mortarless dry laid rock, corbelled ceilings. They're aligned to things like equinox, sunrise, and
Solstices.
and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And they claim that they're the standard model is that they were built by settlers coming over here, but some of them are on like the sides of mountains that doesn't
Yeah, in the
make
middle
any
of nowhere
sense.
where no one ever built a house ever. Yeah.
So
Right.
I think that we had builders here long before, any standard model.
Yeah, and your point about the Mayans is really good. The only thing I would say about that is that it would be interesting because the Mayans, like if you look at their constructions, it doesn't look like what the rock wall probably looks like. Like I'm not sure. I don't know because I haven't seen real clear pictures of it. But do you think that Mayan construction looks similar to what the rock wall looks like? Do you think they could have been the same builders?
Probably not, but over the many centuries that they were
Yeah, they could have changed
existence, who knows what changes they might have made in their structures.
Right. No, they just had one crazy engineer who was like, screw this, I'm going north and building a rock wall.
That's right. There we go. That's my new theory.
There was one other thing when we had our initial discussion about doing the interview. You mentioned something that reminded me of like a keystone cut, maybe you're talking about the rings in it, but I got the idea that there were like impressions in the stone that had metal. Like, is that right? Like metal poured into them, or?
Yes, and one scientist would say that it was an alloy, that it had to be from somebody making it.
Right.
And a different scientist said, no, that wasn't an alloy at all. It was just hapstance minerals or metals. And
Yeah.
He sculpted it, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a word for people like that. We call them skirptards.
They call themselves skeptics. We call them skirptards.
Skirptards.
well, now, the History Channel did a special on the rock wall a few years ago.
No, I'm gonna have to check that out.
And they decided I was able to visit the site that they studied, and they did magnetic testing on just a couple of rocks and determined that the magnetic alignment was the same in all the rocks that they did the testing
okay.
on.
I got you.
So they decided it was all
Natural.
natural.
Okay, now I have a refutation of that result. So there is a theory that the cataclysm that caused the end of the last ice age in around 12,000 years ago was possibly a solar coronal mass ejection that bombarded the Earth with crazy amounts of electromagnetic energy, and it might be possible that it was built before that.
Right.
So,
But what she's saying is that, like, what they come and they measure, they look at each like 3 rocks, like side by side or whatever, or maybe on top of each other, and they check to see is their magnetic alignment within themselves the same, right? And if it is the same, then they say that it formed there. But what you're saying is that the solar ejection actually changed their magnetics to make
maybe it changed them, or right? I don't know. Or the other thing would be, do they match with the current electromagnetic field of the Earth?
Right.
Because
Because if they're like the second part of the test that they should have done definitely is like, so they're saying, okay, they're all the same, that means it's natural. Well, if they're all the same, are they pointing the right way?
Right.
Because if they're not, somebody put them there.
if the wall turns, then the magnetic alignment of those rocks after the wall turns should be kind of pointing in a different direction.
Yeah. Or
Compared to the rock.
Or if it was natural, it should remain pointing in the same direction even though the wall turns.
That's what I'm saying. That's
Yeah.
what I meant to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all very interesting, but I don't understand all of that. So it's
We're just
I know
speculating
that-
over
that
here.
They only studied just that one small section
Right.
Yeah.
of the rock wall and didn't study any of the other outcroppings
Right.
that are in the county.
Now I've read that there's one place where there was a dig done a while back that was kind of near a highway that the public people can just go see, like you can stop. Or did you say that got flooded out, or?
It rained afterward. This was the one that the History Channel
Oh, okay.
studied, and we had some heavy rains, and it basically just
Filled in the hole. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ah,
I did talk to the person that excavated that and asked him if you were going to try to preserve a part of the rock wall, how would you do it?
yeah.
And he said that you would have to come in from the backside and put some rebarb or concrete or,
Yeah, shore it up, basically.
yes, from the backside, and then, protect it on the front side with plexiglass or a roof or something.
That's interesting. So is it sandstone? Do you know what it's made of? Like, is it sandstone or limestone?
I think it's sandstone.
Okay. So it is susceptible to rain erosion. And,
Right.
yeah. Now, so what do people in the town that generally that know about the wall? What do they think about it? Like, what do you guys all generally think about the wall?
Well, of course, I want it to be man-made.
Right.
I just,
We do too.
in my heart, that's what I feel it is and want it to be.
Right.
Although I realize too that more than likely, man might have used part of it to change it
Right.
or to build something different. But I want it to be man-made.
Right. From the
Last
ground up, you mean?
December, we had a program at the Rockwall County Historical Foundation on the rock wall. And it was a debate. And prior to the program beginning, about half of the people in the room thought that the rock wall was a natural formation, and about half thought it was man-made. And after the program, virtually everybody believed that it was a combination of the two.
That's very interesting.
I cannot do that.
I want it to be man-made too.
Yeah, so do I.
Oh, good. I'm not the only one.
No, so I'm curious now that you're talking about there are portions of the wall that can protrude from the surface, but most of it is completely covered. So if it's sandstone, what is the rest of the soil
Yeah, what's covering it?
that covers it, and how deep does it go?
Well, what I have been told is that it's about 3 feet under the surface, and the majority of the soil around here is white clay.
Of course.
The good dirt, Rockwall is on a hill, and the good dirt over many, many, many years has been washed down into the bottoms, which is now covered with water in Lake Ray Hubbard.
Right.
So our official show observer, Brett England,
Yeah, he's asking about the lake.
He says, "I'm curious to know where the wall is relative to the reservoir, Lake Ray Hubbard. There are so many ancient things that are written off as natural, then get flooded by damming up of a river."
Yep.
Well, there are probably sections of the rock wall underwater now.
Under the water.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Or if it wasn't a single, people rarely build a single giant edifice, except like if it's a pyramid. And even then there's stuff all around it. So if that really is a man-made wall and it's some kind of enormous enclosure or some other structure or whatever, there's probably other smaller structures or similar structures around it that many of them may go down into the lake. I'm thinking now of there's a place in Peru called Cusco, And up on this like a prominent hill, it's like a cliff above that overlooks a city down below, is this massive constructed wall that's made out of limestone, and it's highly anomalous. It's like megalittically built and everything, and it's very strange and like
About sexy woman.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it zigzags and does it's
Yeah, and it's the stones are so enormous at first that you would think that they couldn't have been built by people, and then they're also put together like puzzle pieces. None of them they're not square. You know, they all have these very organic looking shapes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of that, like, so you guys are up on this hill, and then you have, you know, you're up high, and it sounds like that, like that there's this a similar construction up there. You've got this enormous wall that's like huge.
and it actually looks like that those walls he's describing look like they were done sort of like terracing. They were retaining walls.
Yeah.
So as you go down the hill, there's more and more walls, but above the wall, it's pretty flat.
Yeah. And supposedly there was an ancient fort there, but it was destroyed during the conquest. But so, okay, so this brings up another question. Do you know how tall, or I guess deep, the wall goes? How tall it is? If you were standing at the base has anybody dug at the base of it? Do they know?
Dr. Glenn was a rock wall person, and he studied the rock wall extensively.
Okay.
And in his writings, he said it went down as deep as 50 feet.
Wow.
Now, one section that was open, excavated maybe 20 or 30 years ago, it looked like it was at least 50 feet.
Wow. That's amazing. So, how about this? How about the stones that it's made of? Like, could they be picked up by a single person, or are they enormous?
They're all different sizes.
Okay.
We have some that are maybe 4 feet long and maybe 1.5 feet wide. Mm-hmm. And very, very heavy.
Yeah, that's a pretty
And
big
then
rock.
there are some smaller stones that
I cannot do that.
are brick size.
Okay. And that's pretty standard. Like, you look at ancient constructions, they did this thing called heterogeneous masonry, where all the stones were different sizes and shapes. So that's amazing. That's really cool. So are the now you said that there was a hoax.
Yes, there was a hoax. It was in the Rockwall paper, and it was also in the Dallas paper. And I really don't know the dates, but I think it was probably in the early 1900s. And there apparently were 2 farmers that found a cavern, and they went in it, and there were giant iron beds that were maybe 30 feet long, and giant rocking chairs, and
Giant rocking chairs.
corridors that led toward the center of town where the old courthouse is now. Mm-hmm. And apparently they found giant skulls.
Right.
Stand down
And
or die.
this went on for several weeks. And at one point they said they would allow people to come and actually look at it.
Okay.
But then they never did. So, and I think it was pretty much decided after a couple of weeks that it was a pretty big hoax.
Yeah, it was a trick on everybody. Well, it's also it's interesting because there have been very large skeletons discovered, like in Indian burial mounds all over the United States. But no one ever said anything about
I cannot
30-foot
do that.
beds or rocking chairs.
Right, iron beds. But who am I to say? It's
Right.
not wrong.
Stand down.
Right. It could have been built by giants. You know. I remember reading a story, and it may have been an embellished version of that story, and it read like what you would call yellow journalism. You know, like old newspaper like hype. You know, where they're digging or whatever, and then one of them's all, "Come on, boys, let's go down inside," and like you're just like, "All right, seriously." Nobody says that.
Cannot do that.
And they go down in there and they find this gigantic cauldron full of bones sticking out of it, like the giants were eating people. You know. So I don't know if that was the original hoax or whatever, but I found that on the internet and I was like, well,
Stand down.
this is a little far-fetched. But yeah, I can't completely write off giant skeletons being associated with it. I don't know. Because there have been a lot of reports all over the world, or all over the United States and the world, really, of enormous skeletons from very long ago.
Cannot do that.
I've never seen one for 30 feet. They're usually 12, 14 feet. Yeah.
Stand
There are
down
also
or
stories
die.
about Bigfoot too, Kyle.
That's right. There are stories about Bigfoot.
I cannot do that.
We talk about all that stuff on this. That's one of the things we talk about on this show, or of the many topics we talk about on this show, is these kinds of things, and we go through them and say, like, what do we think of this? And Bigfoot, we haven't really gone through Bigfoot yet, except that a lot of the reports are pretty hilarious.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yes. You know.
Yeah, I'm not a big cryptid guy, but I am a very big, ancient, strange stone constructions guy. So that's why I'm talking to you and not somebody about Bigfoot.
Yeah, there's just so many cases of amazing, massive stone structures all over the world, except here. And then even down in Central America, you've got these massive stone structures, and it just doesn't seem extremely unlikely to me that this thing could be man-made. The kind of the main question I have now, based on your description, if it's on a hill, how did it get buried?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And so
Because
thinking,
basically the rain and everything has been digging it out for thousands of years.
but again, going back to this idea of the end of the last ice age, that seems to me to make the most sense for something like this. If it was man-made, that it would have to be around that time or before,
Right.
because there were
I cannot do that.
some of the best prevailing theories of the day in terms of what caused that major shift in the climate and the melting of the glaciers and everything was extremely cataclysmic. It was global in scope, and it wiped out, all the megafauna and everything. And so,
And there were enormous eruptions of water from the oceans, the seas, and then that coming down from the glaciers. So that could bury huge constructions like that.
yeah, and I think you told me about clay. A lot of the clay deposits we have were actually
Glacial in
origin.
origin.
Their origin was glacial. So the fact that it's surrounded in white clay,
Yeah, very interesting.
that it was inundated in a flood.
Yeah.
A very
Well,
silty
Rockwall
flood.
was also on the eastern edge of the interior
I cannot
seaway.
do that.
That, in fact, we have a lot of fossils in our driveway.
Ah,
and
so do
the
we.
stones in our driveway.
Yeah.
And so we know that the ocean covered this area.
Right. You're talking about what they would
The
say.
western inland, is it?
Yeah, the
Seaway.
inland sea that we had down here.
Right.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, we're in the hill country, so we have that same fossil full of ocean life material all over the place here. So that's very interesting. And that would, if it's buried in that stuff, that would make it very old, for sure.
Right.
So, what have the geologists said about it? Do you know, like let's go through this. The various, you said that various scientists, paleontologists, archaeologists, everything have kind of looked at it. What have they said? Do you know, like, can you give us a rough?
I think the geologists say natural.
Right.
Archaeologists say possibly man-made.
That's interesting.
I cannot
And the
do
geologists think it's natural because they're claiming that it's some kind of rift formation. That it's a
Yeah. Does anybody have a theory as to its natural formation, or
Yeah,
do they
they
just
say
say
it's natural.
it's probably natural because it can be man-made?
That's kind of, yeah.
yeah.
Dang it! I hate it when that happens.
That's exactly right.
But it is interesting that some archaeologists have looked at it and said this could be man-made because
Yes.
yeah, I would be interested to talk to those guys if they're still around.
Well, some of them go back a century, so they probably aren't around anymore.
Oh yeah, back as far as when they still called them antiquarians.
Yes.
You also told us about in your family. I can't remember who it was, but that someone built. Like they wanted it to be open to the public to come see,
And they're taking pictures around there.
Right. David's grandfather, Tom Knupp, and his brother, Rich Knupp, opened up the original section in 1936 when the Texas Centennial was going on. And of course, Rockwall just had one main road through it
Right.
that went to Dallas. And so all the traffic, went right by it. And they built a petrified wood and stone archway, which is still present.
Wow.
And they charged 25 cents for adults and 15 cents for kids to go down in the rock wall.
That's awesome.
That's
And
great.
the area was a gathering place for a lot of the young people in town. Groups of people would come to have their picture made in front of the arch. And they also had, David's granddad sold tasty bread, and candy bars, and RC cold water.
Man, I have 25 cents. Can I come?
Yeah, we want to go.
And they even had boxing matches because people would gather, and invariably somebody would have some boxing gloves. And they'd say, well, let's just have a boxing match.
Let's have a fight.
And they had, similar to a penny arcade, David's granddad set up bottles.
Oh
And
yeah.
if they could toss pennies in the bottle, then they
do that.
could go down and see the rock wall free.
Ah,
Oh, that's cool.
And
I'd have to pay 25 cents. I'm not good at that.
I'm wondering how many pennies are still down there.
Oh yeah.
And so
For
that
future archaeologists to find, be like, see,
Yeah, that's
this
what I
is
was going to say.
man-made.
12,000 years from now, archaeologists will be looking at this petrified wood arch and they'll be like, oh, it's totally natural.
Completely natural. What about these pennies? Oh, it's just a mineral collection. It's a random collection of minerals.
That'll make me want to go down there and start digging.
So that area of that original area of the rock wall that was exposed during that time when they were doing this, is that still exposed? Can you still go down there and see it, or is it?
No, in fact, I have never seen it, the original. I've seen it at other locations. But they closed it in the mid to late 40s for a couple of reasons. One being that my husband's family lived on one side of the rock wall, and his grandparents lived on the other side. And David would walk in his sleep, and they were afraid he would fall in the well or the rock wall. area. And also people would break down the fences to try to sneak in at night and in the evening to see it so they wouldn't have to pay.
Sneaky
And David's
geologist.
family had sheep and goats, and they were constantly getting out. So the way they closed it is they just bulldozed dirt over it.
Oh,
So
it's really closed.
well, it's closed, and you can still see the steps that led down into it and the arch.
Wow. Well, now I want to go down there and dig.
Come on, we'll just start digging.
So you live right next to that area. That's right. Is that right?
Yes, we live about 50 yards from
Wow.
where the original one digging was.
Are there any of the pictures and stuff? Do you have any of the pictures from that? You know, you said people would gather down there and take photographs and stuff. Are there any of those we can
I've got
post?
pictures, and would you like for me to get some to you?
Oh, that would be
Yes,
great.
That would be fantastic.
We'll post them
Okay.
on the feed.
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
And then also the Carolyn, the curator of the museum.
Right, Carolyn Holt.
Yes, she had I think it was a drawn or painted picture of, you know, a depiction of the wall of the
One of the
original.
parts with the windows and stuff.
Yeah, and she sent me that, and I don't know who it belonged to, but I asked for permission to publish it in the podcast when we do the interview, and I think she was trying to get that, but I don't know who did it.
Okay, well, I can check with her, and we can certainly locate whose picture it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we would love to publish that one too.
Yeah, it was really cool. It had some of the lintel stones like above
Yeah.
little look like kind of like windows or things like that in the wall. It was really cool.
And we have a hometown boy. He's my age. His name is John Lindsay, and he's an architect, and he has done a lot of research and studying on it, and that might be his drawing, but I can find that out.
Oh yeah, I could probably.
Do you know if he would want to talk to us? Is that possible?
He very likely could. Yes.
Because that would be great too. I really like. We live so close to Rockwall. Like we're in Texas, and I feel like this is a subject that's in our backyard, and I really would just love to get the real information out there, because there's so much crap on the internet from one side and the other of whether it's real or not. And,
Well, and what's sad is that a lot of people that live in the actual town of Rockwall and in the Rockwall County don't even know why the town or the county was named Rockwall.
yeah, I have a friend who has family there and lived there for a long time, and he's, I was like, oh, you're from Rockwall? Do you know why it's named that? It's got this crazy, awesome, like, ancient stone wall down there. And he's like, what? I never heard that.
Right.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that have no idea. And unfortunately, I think some of our political leaders don't really seem to care.
Yeah.
Because I think it needs to be open and where it can be seen by the public, and especially the kids.
Right.
School kids need to know the history of our county.
Yes. Okay, so that brings me to another question. I've seen this also on the internet. I wanted to ask you if this is true, that on occasion during voting or whatever, there will be a petition that will get all kinds of signatures from townspeople to allocate money to do stuff with the rock wall, and then somehow, even though all these signatures were gotten to get the petition in, it somehow doesn't get voted in. Is that true?
That I don't know anything about that.
Okay, so that's probably not true. That's probably a made up story. Because that always sounded weird to me. It's like it make it's like somebody wanting to push a conspiracy, right? Like, oh yeah, we get all these signatures from the townspeople, and then somehow it gets voted down. And you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I think we would probably know about that if that were the case.
You probably would. That's why I wanted to ask. Okay.
But there are still areas of the wall that are exposed that can be viewed. Like, is it all on private property or?
It's all on private property. And my husband was walking a couple of years ago in a new housing area where houses were being built. Mm-hmm. Very, very close to where I grew up. And he came home one day and said part of the rock wall is exposed.
Oh.
And I went and to see it, and it was where they were leveling a lot for a new house to be built. And it was probably 20 or 30 feet long and maybe 2.5 or 3 feet exposed.
Yeah.
And so I told one of the city councilmen about it, and he went and looked at it. And unfortunately, a week later, every stone was gone.
Oh no.
What?
So, when people find sections, sometimes the building of homes is more important than preserving.
Right.
Dang it.
So we were talking about preservation efforts for the wall and what you wanted to do with that, or what was necessary for it. And you were so you told us about the contractor or the digger, the guy who said that it would need to be shored up and then protected in the front.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about needing to raise funds for that, or?
Well, I don't know. There was a bond election a few years ago that did not pass. And I personally don't think it was presented properly where people understood what it was for, and it was just part of another bond, issues too. And they say they can't do bond issues, they can't have another bond election, which I've known cities that have.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very important to have it open someplace, whether it's the original one or one of the other areas where the rock wall has been found, just because that's our history.
Right. So if people that are listening or that read about this want to help, whether they're from Texas or not, how could they do that? Is there a place they can go, or somebody they can contact?
They could probably contact the Rockwall Mayor or the Rockwall County Commissioners, the Rockwall County Historical Foundation is very interested in preserving the rock wall.
Okay, so the Historical Foundation is a good go-to thing, because we've talked to them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So people can contact the Rockwall Historical Foundation. They have a website online.
Right, Rockwall County Historical Foundation.
Right. They can contact them if they want to help. So that's great.
That would be great, because the more people that are interested in it and would like to see it open, then the better chance we have of actually seeing that happen.
Right.
Yeah. And we would, just personally, we'd love to come up there sometime and take a look at what is exposed on y'all's place or anywhere. See what we can see and take some photographs. And we could do, all these topics we talk about on the podcast come up time and time again. So it's not like we do one show on one thing and then move on. It's kind of like we keep all these things going. So that would be a lot of fun, and we could do, if to get a look at whatever is exposed out there and take some photographs.
Yes. Well, Kyle, you and Russ are invited anytime.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you.
Snake Rose field trip. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We've got about an hour of material. And is there anything else you want to say?
Can't think of anything else. I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed getting to know both of you a little bit.
Yeah, likewise.
Likewise, for sure. And we will definitely keep in touch, and we will come up there and dig for pennies.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and if you whenever you get the time, if you have any of those photographs, and you can either photograph them or scan them, however you
can get them to us. Snail mail, email, however you do it.
Okay, I'll do it.
That would be awesome. All right, Patty. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Well, you are welcome, and stay safe.
All right.
All right. You too. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. All right. That was awesome.
That was a great interview.
Yeah. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to discuss all of the amazing articles and photos that Patty sent us.
Yes. Rock walls and snakes.
From across the sands of time, through the ethereal mists, two voices, two brothers, two snakes, in a 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science.
Dos hermanos. Dos serpientes.
Man, that was really great. So,
Yeah.
I looked into the other supposed rock walls that are, they're calling the rock wall in Rockwall, Texas. The geologists are calling it a sandstone dike.
Yeah.
So I looked into that. The one she said was in Arkansas, possibly, and then another one in Texas. I didn't find anything about the other one in Texas. There were some pictures on Wikipedia of sandstone dikes, and none of them look anything like the rock wall in Rockwall.
Right.
But there was an interesting thing in
Do that.
Arkansas, which was called the Natural Steps.
Yeah.
Of course, they named it that because it
Right.
can't be an ancient fort. But I definitely want to read that a little bit later.
Yeah. That was fantastic. Yeah.
But
They named a bunch of stuff in Arkansas natural this and natural that because apparently no one is allowed to think that it might be not natural.
right, so look out, Patty. They're coming for Rockwall. They're gonna try to change the name to Natural Rockwall, Texas. Don't let it happen.
Don't let it happen. So, like you said, she sent us a whole ton of great stuff, like photographs of old newspaper articles, other pictures that are black and whites from when they had the arch, the petrified wood
arch.
And stone arch in front of the digging for the rock wall on their property. And like pictures of her ancestors and her husband's ancestors. And I decided after looking at those pictures that every picture of me from now on needs to be of me in a 3-piece suit. Because damn, that dude looks sharp. And I was like, man, I want to look like that when I'm in pictures. Like shoes are shiny, suit's impeccable, like awesome rock wall thing behind him. Damn.
Yeah. If we ever go to pyramids, gotta bring the 3-piece suits.
That's right. 3-piece purple plaid. All right, so I'm going to read one of the articles. This is this one somebody has labeled from 3/16/1999. and it's called Exploring Myths of Rock Wall, and it is by Bill Hensel, I think is how you say his last name. So he says, at the March newcomers meeting held at Chandler's Landing, the room full of members and many guests were entertained, educated, enthralled, enthused, and energized with the presentation by John Lindsay. A nice alliteration there.
I believe John Lindsay is the architect.
That's right. That's what she talked about, yeah. John lives in Rockwall and is a practicing architect.
Oh, but I should have waited for you to read the story.
He describes himself as an amateur archaeologist. Based on his tremendous knowledge of archaeology and the ability to explain and transmit it, there's nothing amateurish about John at all in attendance. There's nothing amateurish about John, and all in attendance would no doubt agree. John's subject was Rockwall's rock wall. I guess most of us have heard about this so-called wall from which our town got its name. There is a replica wall made from actual stones in front of the county courthouse. Many landowners report outcroppings of the wall in various parts of the county. Much has been written about the wall and its origin, so the statement that a wall actually exists is nothing new. But then perhaps you've never been treated to one of John's lectures, because he brings new insights and documentation regarding the wall, its origins and theories, which, if correct, could literally change history as we know it and accept it today. John is no newcomer to these digs, pardon the pun. There you go, Billy. He spent much of his early youth hunting squirrels and catching catfish in the bottoms, which are now covered by the waters of Lake Ray Hubbard. He graduated from Rockwall High School in 1959, did his undergraduate work at North Texas State, and received an advanced degree from the prestigious Harvard University. He left Rockwall in 1975 and worked at various jobs, including a stint at NASA, which apparently was invaluable in helping to interpret some of the data he has amassed concerning the precise location and orientation of the wall and some of its features. John returned to our fair city in 1991 and has spent countless hours in his research and efforts to untangle this local mystery, or perhaps better described as a phenomenon. One of the theories of the wall suggests that it is a natural geological occurrence. John's findings and studies debunks this in the proverbial New York Minute. The wall is definitely man-made. Made by whom and made when are questions not yet fully answered. But John has some data that can lead to some very interesting conclusions. For those who might envision some little old stone fence, John has news for you. The wall is actually a gigantic rectangular structure measuring 3.5 by 5.6 miles on its sides. The wall stands 50 feet high, with some stones estimated to weigh as much as 2 tons. John provides evidence of windows and doors built into the wall, and the placement and orientation of these openings have significance when compared to similar structures associated with known ancient cities. The architectural features of the windows and doors are the same as applied today in modern buildings, and it's mind-boggling to think that someone applied this science thousands of years ago. John is not tackling this project alone. He is the coordinator and director of the project, but, for instance, has enlisted the aid of geologists from Texas Tech in helping to identify the geological age of the rock material and its mineral makeup. He is receiving support from NASA, where their ground-penetrating image technology will help to produce a detailed plan of the complete structure. Heavy earth-moving equipment is due to arrive shortly, and a massive excavation effort will uncover a 300-foot portion of the wall to its maximum depth of 50 feet. When John speaks of this latter operation, his eyes light up and you can almost hear the gears turning in his head. Excited just doesn't describe his feelings. After John's talk, he sat beside me and tried his best to enjoy his lunch. He had raised everyone's interest and curiosity to such a pitch that ladies kept coming to our table with questions and comments. John may have gotten a bad case of indigestion from gulping down his food, but all comers were met with enthusiasm, and his machine gun-like patter continued, even through the pecan pie dessert course. Let this be a warning of things to come. John promises to blow the lid off of some long-standing conclusions regarding the wall. If things happen as he predicts, little old Rockwall will have a new place in the world map. Just remember, you heard it first, right here.
Not if the scriptards have their way.
That's right, and they usually do.
So yeah, I was reading that article by the leading scriptard of all scriptards,
John Colavito.
Yeah. And he was talking about...
Or Jason, I'm sorry, Jason Colavito.
Jason, yeah.
Ugh.
He was talking about an excavation of it. He's like you can just feel the negativity in his tone when he's saying, there's this massive crawler out there just ripping up rock.
Yeah, he's dripping with scriptor. Yeah. Yes.
Golly. Yes, dude, you have to use an excavator.
That's right. When you're digging at something 50 feet deep, you probably should use an excavator.
Yeah, unless you want it to take 50 years for your precious archaeologist to uncover it with toothbrushes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay.
Anyway, sorry about that.
That's all right. I've got this other article that she sent. This is a typewritten version of it, so I don't know if this was ever published or not. But it's called Rockwall's Rockwall, Man-Made or Natural? Question mark. I'm going to read some excerpts from this. So, all sorts of opinions are advanced by awestruck visitors, ranging from seismic upheaval of the earth to undoubtedly the wall is the outer ramparts of an ancient walled city, the remains of which now lie buried beneath the feet of the present-day Rockwallites. A strange substantiating fact is advanced by the buried city class of philosophers or would-be scientists, clinging unshaken to their theory, is the fact that no stones similar to those composing the strange wall are found anywhere but in that section, other than occasional scattered stones from wrecked or fallen early-day chimneys that early settlers reported using in building of chimneys taken from the rock wall. The theory of no other such stones about the community, which is true, incites the speculation. Okay, now I've got to skip to the next page. Here. Incites the speculation of their origins. 2 or 3 apparent logical methods of securing the stones include they were molded soil composition by hands of prehistoric builders, and that they could have been quarried at some distant point and brought there by boats. So, former extensive investigation conducted several years ago by a Dallas publisher brought several archaeologists and geologists to Rockwall for an extended period. The wall was defined as about 4 miles long and 3 miles wide. Most geologists finally placed their stamp of disapproval. The wall was not man-made, classifying it as only another strange phenomenon of nature. Another geologist publicly declared he believed about its confines there lies a prehistoric city and civilization, presuming to the point such a decision is warranted by the perfectly laid straight line of the wall, which is also truly perpendicular and perfectly smooth-faced. Some philosophers contend geologists place their negative stamp on the idea the wall was man-made because they usually work along the lines of presumption to a point where proof seems positive, but often without the assistance of comparative data. And this proof is insufficient to warrant a positive statement for their decision the wall is not man-made, which is, we talk about that stuff all the time on this show, where they're just like, and we actually mentioned this in the interview with her, where we asked, do they have a theory of how it was built?
Right.
Or is it just because they say it can't be man-made? And she was like, yeah, it's that one.
Yeah.
So here's this part is very interesting right here. In disapproving such decisions, one philosopher contends the wall is prehistorically man-made, constructed so distantly far into the remote past that nothing of an ancient nature discovered to date would equal its age, and that no comparative data is available due to its age. In other words, like, the reason why you have no comparative data is because this is the oldest thing ever found anywhere ever, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
He contends that this wall was not built of rock but of adobe or sun-baked clay, and that the earth filled in, as is the case with coal, marble, and fossilized skeletons, and that the earth's pressure and seepage conditions compressed the adobe to about 1/3 of its original width, the process caused by saturation after its burial. He declares nature erects barriers, etc., but no such construction as mortar joints and masonry work, and believed the wall a man-made edifice in early ages that was eventually buried by a steady earth drift which filled in and compressed the wall after the seeping and softening of the adobe. Another philosopher theorizes the wall is undoubtedly prehistoric, contending it was the possible face of a breakwater built when the major portion of that country was a sea for protection throughout that vicinity. So that's awesome. So that guy was saying that this wall was actually made of adobe and clay, like clay bricks.
Right.
And that it's so ancient that it became fossilized, which means it was the clay and everything was exchanged and it became stone.
Right. Which would actually explain the rings protruding from the stones in the
Right.
wall. Like if they were actually coming out of stone,
That's
and
very-
not the joints.
Right, unless they had a shamir, that's very difficult to explain. So if they were making giant clay bricks, then you could easily mold metal rings into the bricks, and then later on that becomes fossilized and the metal rings are still sticking out of it. Yeah, that's very
Especially if the
interesting.
metal rings were of an alloy similar to the Pillar of Delhi.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the iron that doesn't ever...
Right.
Yeah.
Incorruptible.
Or even the legendary or mythical hardened copper that was supposedly found in the Americas on occasion.
Yeah, okay, so that brings me to this other story about the Arkansas,
Yes.
quote-unquote, natural steps.
The natural steps of the Arkansas fort.
Yeah. Let me find this.
So I think that's a fascinating concept. Like, this guy also said that the wall was compressed.
Yeah,
Right, which I
to
thought was
1/3
interesting.
of its size, or
Yeah,
what,
width.
original size.
Yeah, width. I think he was saying width. Like, that it was squeezed and it became narrower. Not that it was shrunk vertically, but that it was squeezed horizontally.
So, like what he was saying was the inundation of the sediment or whatever.
Yes.
It sort of like re-wet the wall,
Right. And squeezed
softened it, and then
squeezed it, and then like replaced it with minerals,
Right.
and fossilized it, and that's
crazy.
Yeah.
So the other thing I thought of was vitrification, because in the book Forgotten Civilization by Robert Schoch,
Yes.
he's talking about the vitrified forts, and they're another name for them is glass forts,
Right.
Whatever.
Those who live in glass forts shouldn't start wars.
Yeah, so that they don't, there's all these theories about how they were vitrified, and some people say, oh, they were trying to make them stronger, but actually it's been proven that
Right, by turning them into glass.
vitrification makes them weaker,
Yeah.
or more brittle.
Right.
But I mean, and then they were like, oh, people tried to burn them, but
Right.
there's no way, like, you would have had to set massive fires all the way around every square inch of the structures.
Right. And I've actually seen, I can't remember where I watched this, but I remember watching where they set up this enormous bonfire next to one of the walls of one of these forts, and got it going, and it was huge. I mean, it was a big bonfire, and they kept it going for days, and it did not vitrify the stone.
Yeah.
So.
But of course, he's talking about the idea of a CME.
Right, I'm talking about the theory that the vitrification was done by giant fires set outside of the fort in order to burn the people out.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
It doesn't work. But Schoch's theory is that they were vitrified by a solar mass eject.
Right, incredible heat from the sky in some
Right.
form or another. Yeah.
So my point is, this thing could have been subjected to that,
Yes.
and then inundated with sediment, whatever cataclysm.
Exactly. I
Catastrophe
do
followed.
think it's fascinating that Rockwall itself is on a hill, and she said that the soil there is mostly this white clay.
Yeah.
If it's on a hill, then all the erosion of the past, whoever knows how many thousands of years, has been digging it out, basically,
Right.
from whatever it was buried in before.
Right.
So that's very interesting.
But it also goes down into the now
bottoms, yeah.
Ray Hubbard
Right.
Lake or whatever reservoir.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's more than just on a hill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's anyway. It doesn't look like a sandstone dike. Go look at the pictures of sandstone dikes.
Yeah. We'll post some of these in the show notes.
And we've got
They do not look like Rockwall.
these pictures she sent us of the rock wall. There's just no comparison at all.
Right.
But anyway, I want to read it. I want to read a little bit of this. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's par for the course, though, for script derping out of place artifacts, which is what the rock wall is. If it is man-made, it is in 3-part. And they always do this. It's called special pleading, where they claim all these ridiculously unlikely circumstances are more, where they claim all those things are more likely than it being man-made because of their theory about where man has been and how long,
Right.
But
we've already totally destroyed their theories about where man has been and what have they been doing. So.
Right. I think that this was a big joke by a Spaniard. That he threw the rock wall down in a crack in order to trick people later.
Okay, so I'm going to read this. This is actually on Wikipedia. It is Natural Steps, Arkansas.
Yeah.
And there's a drop-down menu, Ancient Fort. So that's the most important one.
Definitely the one you click first.
The Benedict Manuscript, written by R.W. Benedict, circa 1880. Discovery of antiquarian relics at Natural Steps, Pulaski County, Arkansas, on South Side River. About the year 1820, my father and family settled at Natural Steps, making a purchase of an improvement on public lands of a Quapaw Indian named Heineman. I guess I don't know if I'm pronouncing that
It's all right. It's Snake Bros names.
Yep. I, at the time, was about 8 years old, and the events that I am now to relate are my own recollections and observations. About the year 1821, General John Nix of the United States Army was proceeding up the Arkansas River to supersede General William Bradford in the Indian country of the far west and to establish the military post of Fort Gibson. He was traveling in 3 keel boats loaded with troops and supplies. In passing our home, General Nix, being an old acquaintance of my father, John C. Benedict, stopped off to see his old friend. Previous to his arrival, we had discovered that upon the spot where we were living, there had evidently been a fort of great antiquity and unknown to history. We invited the attention of General Nix to our discovery, and after making a thorough examination, he pronounced the ruins to be unquestionably those of a very ancient raised fort.
Ha!
Every evidence existed corroborative of the fact that away back in the past centuries there had been an important fortification at this place, and that there had been a terrible fight engaged in, either at its capitulation and destruction. Is that right? Yeah, and destruction, or at some time previous. The 4 walls of the fortification were still plainly visible, and their outlines well defined, and General Nix stepped their straight lines in measuring them. That this fort must have been of great antiquity was evidenced by the fact that at this time, immense trees were growing in the area inside the walls. Wild cherry trees, full 2 feet in diameter and 50 or 60 feet to their first branches, as straight as an arrow. The walls were built of rock, and from the quantity of them, these walls must have been of great size, but they were now torn down and covered with debris. In the immediate vicinity of the fort, on a high elevation and far above any possible chance of overflow, there was to be seen a large excavation, now become a pond, grown up with Menachanoc weeds and other water plants. All the surroundings proved that this excavation was of great age, contemporary with that of the fort, and from its situation on the high lands, it could have been made but for one purpose, and that to procure the material for the embankment of the fort, or else a water receptacle for the use of the fort. Outside of the walls and along the bank of the river, we found immense quantities of, quote, mashed or flattened bullets of various sizes and shapes, indicating that they had been shot into something, evidently the stone walls of the fort, and had been mashed by the contact. Here were also found stone hatchets and arrowheads, all pointing unmistakably to the conclusion that a sanguinary battle had been fought here at some time.
Whoa, they found bullets?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Inside of the walls, while plowing, we found great quantities of lead that had been melted, and also an immense Indian axe of solid stone, perfect in form, save that the handle had been broken off. This was a very interesting relic, and affords room for much thought and conjecture, as it was of extraordinary size and uncommon shape, being 4 times as large as anything of the kind we had ever seen before or since. Nothing of its form had ever been seen in this country before, and the verdict of all was that it must have been brought from some far-off country by an invading force. In or about the fort was also found another most remarkable relic, which was, quote, a solid piece of brass, weighing exactly 5 pounds, 5 or 6 inches long, square in shape, having on either of its 4 sides 3 distinct deep impressions about the size and shape of an old-fashioned watch case. The center impressions being the largest, and on either end a similar impression covering the entire end, save a margin on the outside.
Oh.
All of these impressions were of like shape, only differing in size. No letters or characters appeared thereon, but perfectly smooth surfaces, save the impression spoken of. This brass nugget was examined by many of the most scientific men of Arkansas in that day, and none were ever able to throw any light on it as to whence it came or for what purpose it could have been utilized. It remained in my father's possession for many years, he always having refused to dispose of it, though frequently urged to do so. Of course, right?
Yeah.
Throw that thing away.
Yeah, get rid of that thing. That's stupid. That's a dumb thing.
And it finally, very mysteriously, disappeared, and we could never get any trace of it.
Oh, man.
About 4 miles above this spot, one Joshua Chandler found a piece, or rather a slab, of lead of peculiar shape and singularly situated. It was found about 18 feet under what appeared to be the virgin soil, which had been some distance from the riverbank. But the wash and caving for many years had reached it, and when found its edge was alone discernible, protruding from the washed bank. Upon excavating it, he found it to be a slab of lead, smooth on the faces and edges, about 8 by 14 inches in size, 2 inches thick, and weighing exactly 77 pounds.
Good grief.
That's crazy. This slab bore distinct signs on its faces of having been struck with an axe or tomahawk, It had a hole in each corner about 1 by 1/2 inch, just about the size that would be necessary for a strap to pass through in order to pack it. It was found in a vein of black clay, and a little removed from it on one side was a bed of ashes and fire coals in the same vein of clay, plainly indicating that this was over the surface of the ground and that the accumulation of ages had thus covered it with 18 feet of soil.
Holy crap.
Here again is ample room for speculation and conjecture. Was this the remains of a campfire? Was this slab of lead cast here and at this time? If so, by whom? For what purpose? And why was it abandoned? From my studies in connection with these discoveries, I am convinced that there certainly was, at some time, an important fort at this place, garrisoned by somebody, that said fort was attacked by invaders, that it was subsequently demolished either before or after capitulation, and that history fails to record any information thereof.
Bullets.
Yeah. So you have the same situation.
Yeah.
Right? This massive vertically situated rock thing that a bunch of scriptards are calling natural.
Yeah.
And then strange metal objects nearby in the vicinity.
Yeah.
It's got straight, square walls.
Yeah, the only difference that I see is that he found either a quarry or some kind of water catchment system. He was saying that it was either where they quarried the rock, or it was
Hubbard.
It's under the lake.
That's right. It's
Dang
gonna
it.
be the lowest spot, full of water.
Yeah. And the Watcher is pointing out that if you do an image search, there are tons of pictures of Pinnacle Mountain, which is nearby this ancient fort or formation, and from all sides, it totally looks like a pyramid. And it does. There's no other mountains anywhere, and just like there's just this one thing sticking up, and it's definitely a pyramid.
Yeah. I guess the thing about both of these stories that does not surprise me in the least bit is that educated people with, formally educated people with characters before their names
And
or after their names are going to say it's not man-made.
Right.
That does not surprise me at all, and especially there's so many reasons why they can't allow that, and we've discussed that on this show so many times. It's just par for the course.
Right. It can't be natural. Those things have to be constants. Those aren't really what you think they are. That thing actually formed in a totally different way. Uniformitarianism wasn't at work on that one thing.
Yeah. There was one other interesting thing that I wanted to point out from one of the articles that Patty sent us.
Okay.
This is part 2 of What is the Rock Wall? And I'm just going to get this one little part. Let's see. This guy, Max Anderson, he's never actually seen the rock wall. The story's describing him, but he looked on a map, I think is what happens here. Let me see if I can find this part.
Yeah, I do think it. I think it's like you said, par for the course. This is low-hanging fruit, like what we were talking about in the last episode. There are so many mysteries in North America that have to do with ancient fortifications, ancient constructions. The colonial root cellars. Like, they're not root cellars, and they're not colonial, and they're in the middle of nowhere. And we mentioned those to Patty as well. Like, there's just so much stuff here that has been denied. And a lot of times, like Jim Vieira says this, there are things that if they were in the old world, they would be totally recognized as being either Paleo or Neolithic in origin. But we're not supposed to have a Paleo or Neolithic. Well, we do have Paleo and Neolithic cultures here, but they are not supposed to have built large stone constructions, even though they are lithic.
Yeah. All right, so I found this section here.
Okay.
So this is about Max Anderson. Although Max has not seen the wall outcropping, his imagination was piqued. Using a copy of Dr. James Glenn's photographic essay on the system of rock walls in Rockwall County as a guide, Anderson marked each occurrence on a county map. He noticed that an earthen dam was located in the area of each outcropping, except in the vicinity of the town location. Anderson then drew red lines from the location in Rockwall to other sites, lines which go directly to each location of the wall. The lines are at 5-degree intervals. Anderson thinks that other undiscovered walls lie on these lines. So, I think what it's saying is that
He started from rock,
from the area of the town and drew straight lines to each of the rock wall outcroppings.
or the earthen dams or whatever that he was finding. Yeah,
Oh, maybe it's that.
yeah. But the other outcroppings,
From the location in rock wall to other sites,
yes,
lines which go directly to each location of the wall.
right. Okay, yeah.
So if each location of the wall is an actual outcropping, not an excavation,
right.
then that it's like fortifications, like the little towers. If let's say the
Yes.
area was surrounded by the wall,
Yeah.
then there would be
So there's a central fortification of some kind, and then there's like other ones out past it that may be, like you said, towers or other like. And okay, so we start to talk about miles and miles of wall. Again, I want to remind people the Great Wall of China is many miles long. So this is not, again, unprecedented. It's not.
right.
Okay, so
The thing that's unprecedented about it is that it's here.
right, and that it's completely buried underneath large amounts of sediment.
Right. But since we're not uniformitarianists, that doesn't necessarily make it ridiculously old.
Right, exactly.
But what Brett pointed out, which was cool, is that if it depends on like the way he drew those lines coming from the city. I'd like to see an image of it. But
Yeah, I think it's basically saying that he started from a central point and drew lines to every other
Right, and
location
they're at-
around it, and
they're at
they were at
5 degree
5 degree intervals.
So what Brett was pointing out is that if you take 360 degrees and divide it by 5, it equals 72. So that if it was
Mind blown.
if the 5 degree intervals make sides of a circular
or
thing,
yeah,
round type enclosure, it would have 72 sides.
Right.
Or 72 towers or protrusions. at
right.
the top.
It's pointing to 72 different points.
Yeah.
And they could be towers, or if it's a continuous thing, all the way around the central point, then it would have a 72 sides if each section was a straight section of wall, if it didn't curve. Yeah. But even if it does curve and it's an actual circle, it's very strange that 72 other positions have been located. So in the article they say that the lines that he drew are at 5 degree intervals. That implies that
It doesn't say that
it
it's
doesn't
a full
say that
circle.
it goes all the way around, right? But each line is 5 degrees apart from the other ones.
Yeah.
So that if you think of it as being a complete thing, that's crazy. 72, as you guys know, is processional.
Yeah, so it's a calendar, bro. It's a giant
Calendar, space calendar, observatory, fort.
All right, we're gonna take one last break.
Yep.
And finish up with the last segment. That's right, introduced by Rush.
One last break for snakes.
Stand down or die. I cannot do that. You will take my place.
And we are back here at the Snake Rose Institute for Advanced Corporate Studies and the relentless pursuit of the liquefaction of defecation. We are discussing the rock wall and the interview we had with Mrs. Patty Canup and all of the ramifications and determinations and geological relations and lithifications. And so one thing we were discussing during the break was what ancient myths or legends do we know about that have 72 anything made out of stone?
I cannot do that.
And one that I remember is about Genghis Khan. So Genghis Khan, and this, I would say that the main thing I have against this idea is that it doesn't seem to be old enough, because Genghis Khan was like 1000 AD, right? He wasn't that long ago. But Genghis Khan was like in the myths or in the legends. It's not actually myth. We know that he existed, but no one's ever found where he was buried. Okay, there was a huge procession, with supposedly with his body in state, like in a giant sarcophagus or whatever. And there was this giant thing where they went through all of his lands in a big train, big fanfare or whatever to bury him. But the whole thing just disappeared, and no one actually knows where they went to bury him. And the legends say that he was buried inside of a big circle of 72 towers or some other kind of stone construction, and each one was a false tomb to trick people. But his tomb actually lied at the center of those 72 constructions. And Genghis Khan, the Mongols were also known for building vast fleets that crossed the oceans to invade other places. Like, they sent a huge fleet of like 700 ships to invade Japan. And they totally would have succeeded if, like, the ships all actually sailed into the bay and were like all anchored off the bay of, and all these people in Japan are like looking out there, and there's like 700 gigantic ships full of warriors, whatever, and each one has a fire on it, and the people are like, oh crap, we're all going to die. But then a hurricane came that night and sunk every ship. So Genghis Khan was like, dang it! So he sent another huge fleet of, I don't know how many, 400, or I think it might have been more, 800 or 900 ships, and another hurricane sank all those ships.
Yeah. Shouldn't have done it in hurricane season.
And that's the origin of the word kamikaze, which means divine wind.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that got politically twisted during World War II. Like, you will be the divine wind to fly your plane into their ships to sink them. You see?
Man, you just blew my mind.
Anyway, Genghis Khan is totally buried in Rockwall.
That's very awesome. So the other thing I realized right before we started this segment is that Rockwall is on the 33rd parallel. And years ago, years ago,
we need like a mind-blown explosion sound effect.
Years ago, I was like, I don't remember what got me on this thing, but there's all this stuff like about the 33rd parallel and the number 33 and all this weird stuff. So I got on Google Earth and I just followed the 33rd parallel all across the United States.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of crazy ancient sites on this parallel line.
Yeah.
And I remember it went through Rockwall, Texas.
Yeah.
So.
It also went through Moundsville in Alabama, which is full of ancient mounds.
Earthen pyramids, basically.
Yeah, earthen pyramids. And you can actually see it on Google Earth. One of them was a compass, like a compass rose.
Yep.
That pointed towards the cardinal, not magnetic directions.
That's right.
So whoever was doing it knew their astronomy.
Yep.
And I think the watcher Brett was saying that it goes very close to Mount Shasta. What did you say, San Diego?
Near where all the
stone
spheres
spheres came out of the mountain. They called dinosaur eggs.
Yeah. Dragon eggs. So I wonder if that fort in Arizona is in Arkansas
is on the 33rd parallel.
Look it up, Brett.
Find out. Is
natural steps.
Yeah, is Pinnacle Mountain on the 33rd? Yeah, that's very interesting. So were you able to think of anything else with 72? Oh, you were saying that there's some ancient texts that describe various walled cities that have 72 this or 72 that.
Yeah, I can't remember in specific. I was trying to give Brett something to look up, but I just remember reading something in the Bible about the New Jerusalem. They were talking about how it was a prophecy, basically, and how it was going to be built, and it was all these 12 crazy
gates,
numbers.
And there's like 1440 across this way.
It was all processional numbers
that way. Yeah.
72 this, 72 that.
Yeah. 1080 that, and 1440 over here, and 108 over this, and yeah.
Okay, the 33rd parallel forms the border between Louisiana and Arkansas.
Okay. All right, so moving to the photographs she sent, and comparing them to the other various images of sandstone dikes and other dike formations that you were able to find.
Yeah, nothing at all like any of them. So the one that stood out to me the most in the photographs is the one with the boy It's the section of wall, and in one of the pictures, there's a boy there standing next to it, but it's like clearly beveled edges that
Yes.
and Patty had talked about that. But I mean, they're like beveled at 45s,
Right.
on both
On all four sides.
horizontal
of the
and
facing
vertical edges
Yes.
of the stone.
Yeah.
Beautifully,
So basically,
like-
if you have a flat stone and you're facing it, like think of a brick, okay? And then you take a knife and sort of tilt it at a 45 to the face of the brick and cut the corners of all four sides, and you end up with this 45-degree bevel, right?
Yeah.
So the blocks in the rock wall have this same beveling feature, which is very difficult to explain as a natural formation. It actually cannot. It's not difficult. It cannot be explained as a natural formation. Like, that's just not.
How may I assist you?
Yeah, they're clearly beveled.
yeah.
So I'm sure that there are scriptards out there that say that they were probably beveled by the people who dug it up because they wanted to be man-made.
Yeah, but that, I mean, like,
Easily
Patty
disproven by
knows
digging
those
up another
people
part.
too,
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that, like, easily disproven by digging up another part in front of the scriptards, but they'll just come up with something else.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and the other natural sandstone dikes that are, when you look them up on Google,
First
they
of all, they're
look
not-
natural.
Yeah, and they're not straight.
Right.
They don't face north-south and then turn 90 degrees to be east-west.
Yeah, they totally look natural. It looks like there was a fissure in the existing
Yeah.
sedimentary layers, a vertical fissure, not straight,
Yeah.
jagged, and then it's got vertical, like where it was filled in by finer sediments or
Yeah.
whatever. It's got
A vertical deposit profile.
Right.
Yeah. Like it clearly flowed into that crack and formed a vertical deposition profile, which is not what we see at Rockwall either.
Yeah. So it's just, I think that it's basically like she said, they don't have a theory of how it formed. They're just calling it something that's as close to
Yes.
something that they know that's natural because
Right.
they want it to be natural because it can be man-made because it ruins all of their
Right.
massive stacks of assumptions.
The controversy around this somewhat reminds me of Yonaguni off the coast of Japan. It's the same problem. You have a rock formation, a gigantic stone formation in a context in which it cannot be man-made or even modified by man and exist within the current prevailing theory, right?
Right.
The thing with Yonaguni is that it's beneath, like the bottom of it is under 90 feet of water. The very top of it, you have to swim down like, I don't know, I think it's like 10 or 15 feet to even get to the top of it. So it's beneath the coastline. It's under the ocean, off the coast of Japan. Okay, and it's very massive, and it is like
cannot
the
do
same
that.
deal. You've got very sharp 90-degree edges. You know, the whole thing is like some people call it a pyramid. It's not a pyramid. It looks to me like a quarry. It may have been a quarry, like people were quarrying huge blocks out of that area.
Yeah.
It could also have been both. Like the ancients were sort of famous for doing many things with one thing. Like, and we do this too. Like, you know, a church, a big cathedral is a place of worship. It's also a place where we bury the dead. It's a place where people go to get healed. It's a place where people go to get counseling. It's a place where you take your kids for daycare. It's like you know,
It's a place where you collect knowledge.
yes.
And books. And
Right. It's a place of contemplation. It's many things. It's a place where people have giant potluck dinners, right? Like it's a place of congregation. So the ancients also did this, but we don't like hang out in quarries unless they're not being worked in anymore and they're full of water and then we're jumping off cliffs into them. But
Yeah.
but this, if Yonaguni is a quarry, it also looks like it may have had some kind of other purposes. Like there are big statue-looking things. There's one of it that looks like a giant turtle. There's another formation over it that looks like a huge human head, right? And that actually is straddling a perfectly beautifully cut like rectangular tunnel, right? So there's this giant thing that looks like a very weathered human head, and it's the roof of a tunnel going through the rock that's square. You know, it's got a flat floor and flat walls, and the flat ceiling is the bottom of the head.
Yeah.
There's another place where there are these two enormous megaliths that are standing right next to each other. Like, so they have this very thin line going down between them. Like, and I tried to find this out and I couldn't do it, but I was wondering if that was above water, if there would be some solstice or
alignment, yeah.
Yes, like coming up through the line. Anyway, it has all these features that make it very difficult to explain away as a natural formation, but they do it anyway because it can't be man-made because it's underneath the ocean. And they know they have I can't say they know, but they have very good data, which will make them say that they know how long ago the ocean was down far enough for that to be above ground, and that's too old. It's too freaking old. The same problem we have in Rockwall, or they have in Rockwall. Like, it has all these clearly what anyone in their right minds would consider to be man-made features like metal rings. There's a beautiful image that she sent us from a newspaper article that looks like some kind of script on one of the blocks, and to me it looks like Sanskrit. I'm not a Sanskrit expert. I'm not an expert in any kind of script.
I am, and I agree with you.
Well, thank you, sir. I will reference you. Sanskrit, reference Kyle. But yes, it looks like some kind of beautiful curving, It
also reminds me of some of the petroglyphs that I was talking about in that are up there in Canada.
Right.
Providence or something. I can't remember what it's called.
The other thing that was blowing my mind, and I was looking through my images of this, is it looks like I need to sit down and do this because I saw enough similarities to where I had very large mind explosions happening, but it looked like the script from Manuscript 512. Yeah. Like, they have script examples in Manuscript 512 of what the explorers copied from what they said were the tops of big arches,
in the Amazon,
or other giant stone constructions.
Well, that was another thing she talked about. It was possibly the Mayans or the.
Yes. Now this is way south of the Mayans. This is Brazil.
I know, but I'm saying
yes,
it's all connected. Right.
Exactly.
Before there was a canal. But this reminds me of the other thing. The other point was that they were talking. Some people had suggested it was both natural and man-made. So now that's what there are in many places in the world natural formations that are just unlike anything anywhere.
Right, they're singular.
Yeah, and so maybe it is something like that, but that it
needs a good explanation, though.
Right, but it looks like there are areas where it has been altered or modified by man.
Right.
So
I would actually say, in my opinion, I would say that the archaeologist that she was talking about that said that their conclusions was that it was maybe not necessarily man-made, but it was something that they found that was natural that man then modified. I would say that that's them not sticking their necks out too far.
Yeah. Probably right. But I just wanted to point out that the Sphinx was originally a natural protrusion of the limestone bedrock that was then carved.
Yeah, isn't that called a yardang?
For some reason I think the yardang hypothesis was...
I mean, the yardang is just a big outcropping of rock, a singular outcropping, and then they carved the Sphinx out of that thing, right?
Maybe so, yeah. I'll have to go back and review this section of Robert Schoch's book where he addressed that.
Oh, okay. I was listening to Graham Hancock, so maybe you've got more recent information on
Yeah, I'm
Schoch.
pretty sure he
said it's not a yardang.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
But I don't know what a yardang is exactly, so... Oh, it's a sharp, irregular ridge of compact sand lying in the direction of the prevailing wind in exposed desert regions formed by the wind erosion of adjacent material that is less resistant.
Thank you, Watcher.
Yeah, I think that's why it's not a yardang, because it wasn't wind erosion.
Oh, okay, I see. I thought a yardang was just a piece of exposed rock sticking above the prevailing landscape. That's not what it is. No, that's definitely not what that is. Compact sand.
Yeah. So the point is that there's a natural formation, and ancient peoples found these natural formations of stone and then carved them into temples.
Yeah. Or
carved them into the Sphinx.
That kind of looks like a lion.
But I mean, like, what's the cliff dwellings even in the Americas?
Oh yeah.
Carved their dwellings out of the stone in the rock or stone in the
they're called. It's called rock cut. You mean?
Yeah.
where they didn't just stack blocks up. They just went up there and cut the entire place out of the cliff.
Yeah.
There are amazing not cathedrals. There are
I cannot do
somethings. They're buildings in Ethiopia. They're all out throughout Ethiopia where they just went up to a mountain and just cut a gigantic hole in the side of a granite mountain and left a temple
Yeah.
so that it's all one piece.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, the other side of the coin. Trying to look at it from the idea that it is a natural formation.
Don't do that.
That it's doesn't look anything to me like a sandstone dike.
Don't do that.
But
How do you get metal rings in natural formation?
right, if what I'm saying is if the ancients had come along and there was already some natural hard stone
Stand
Yeah.
down.
I got you.
something there,
And they were like, this is a good
somewhat
place
like a
to bury
wall,
Genghis Khan.
and they both it's like say it curves and it goes in various different places.
Yeah.
So they excavate. They use the quarry of the areas that are in where the natural stone formation goes in areas they don't want it. They excavate
They
and
quarry that
quarry
out.
all that out, and they
Yeah.
make it straight
Yeah.
so that some of it looks like it's beveled and all awesome, and then other parts of it look natural.
I got you. They did
But they
that at
make it
Machu
into a
Picchu.
straight line.
They did that at Machu Picchu, where it's like you can see that the central parts of what they call the ceremonial parts of the quote unquote city are actually built right into natural but modified like stone from the mountain itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know, and I have no idea how they would have gotten pieces of metal sticking out of the stone. And we're not actually sure. We should have asked.
Are they sticking out of individual blocks? Or are they sticking out between the blocks? Or are they just
Like in
are they
the
sticking in the
mortared
wall?
area.
Or
Yeah.
are they out of the blocks? Yeah, we didn't get to ask that.
But then, the idea that the keystone cuts that have metal deposits in. I mean, come on.
Yeah. That's just natural.
I love your thing about the pennies. Or that's my thing about the pennies, right?
No, I said that.
I say you wouldn't do that.
You were like, yeah, the archaeologist will look at the arch and be like, this is totally natural. And I'm like, yeah, all those pennies. And what about these pennies? Oh, those are just like random mineral collections.
Totally what they would do.
10,000 years from now, there was no town in Rockwall. It's not Rockwall, and that's not an origin of archaeology. It was all a trick by a Spaniard. That's my theory. But when she mentioned the Mayans, I was thinking about this. Like, there's a lot of evidence that the Maya, like the Inca and Aztecs, were the inheritors of a legacy.
I cannot do that.
Right. That they did not actually construct, at least not the core parts of what we now consider to be Mayan pyramids, but that they actually found them and occupied those areas and built things around them and probably did modify them or stack on top of them or clad them or sheathed them in newer stone in order to preserve the older structures that were falling apart or were incredibly eroded. But there's a lot of evidence that they, okay, the main evidence that they were inheritors of a legacy of a previous, more advanced civilization is their calendar. Like, it is now an accepted fact. Well, okay, I have to modify my language. It's now accepted. I can't say it's a fact, but it's now accepted information that the Mayan calendar is not Mayan. That they inherited it from what is now called the Olmecs. Okay, this is
I didn't know
this
that.
is accepted by mainstream archaeology that the Olmecs
Were the ones
had
that
the
passed
same.
calendar.
That they had used the same long count and the Baktun and all those different measurements for calendars. Okay, so the Mayans were the inheritors of this, and it's interesting because like the Mayans are the only known American culture, pre-Columbian American culture, to have the use of placeholders in math, not zero, right? No one else knew about zero. Not, I mean, even like you look at like, like old world cultures like the Romans, they didn't know about zero. To write large numbers in Romans, you need all these characters in a big long string. To to write like 2,462, you got to write V, C, 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 X, 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 1, 1, I. There's no zero, right? They didn't know about placeholders. They couldn't do decimals. They couldn't do fractions. Okay, they knew about fractional numbers, but they didn't have the concept of placeholders, like the decimal system or zeros to hold places.
Right.
Right? So like 100 was just C.
Right.
Right? So why did the Maya have this very advanced like calendrical science when they didn't seem to need it when you look at the rest of their culture and it isn't that advanced?
Yeah. And why did they calculate
Huge amounts of time.
periods?
Right.
Like,
They found, like, I was just going through Fingerprints of the Gods again recently, the Graham Hancock's book, and he was talking about, like, they have found Mayan inscriptions in stone. Oh, yeah. Brett gave us, okay, so 2,462 in Roman numerals is MMCDLXII. Right? Now, I didn't put any zeros in that number, but they don't have zero. They didn't have the concept of it. You know, MM means 2,000.
yeah.
Right. So Graham Hancock was talking about these inscriptions that they had found in quote-unquote Mayan temples, where they're talking about a time period of 300 million years ago. Like, now, why would they be talking about such enormous expanses of time? Well, they got their calendar science from the Olmecs, okay? And very little is known about the Olmecs. Nobody knows where they came from. Nobody knows who they were. People best know them as being the builders of those gigantic basalt heads that weigh like 60, 70, 80 tons each.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just a head. And
There's
found
not actually a body down
Right.
there buried underneath
Right,
it, like
not
there
like
was
Easter
on
Island.
Easter Island.
right. Maybe one of them will have a body at some point. It's hard to tell, because they find a lot of the heads thrown down upside down inside of deep pits that were dug with a lot of burned material, like somebody was trying to. So nobody knows who the Olmecs were. And in a lot of cases, the same faces that we see on these giant basalt heads, which have very either African or Polynesian features. It's hard to tell which, because a lot of people think they're African because basalt is dark, right? But if you like get the color away from it, you can see that the person could also be like a Hawaiian-looking guy. Mm-hmm. He's got very wide nose, big cheeks or whatever. So it's hard to know whether they were African or Polynesian or whatever. But that doesn't matter. The point is that in other places, like at La Venta, I think, in South America, or maybe that's in Central America. Anyway, it doesn't matter. La Venta, there are images of the very tall, aquiline, bearded, Viracocha style Caucasian guys with the like giant basalt head, like either Negro or Hawaiian dudes, like in the same carvings, doing stuff together, right? And those are pre-Olmec. Those are like Viracocha god images, right? So people have like, okay, so Brett is saying La Venta is a pre-Columbian archaeological site of the Olmec civilization located in the present-day Mexican state of Tabasco. Spicy. So this is.
I did not know that Tabasco came from
Tabasco.
Tabasco.
Yeah, it totally does.
Wow.
Yep. So this is a spicy meatball.
You heard it here first, folks.
Tabasco comes from Tabasco and Mexico. All right.
Okay, anyway, where were you going with this?
I was basically saying that, like, she was talking about the Mayans possibly building the place.
Yeah.
And I think she was talking about that because in some of these articles, that was discussed, the possibility of the Mayans, right? And that's because I can't say this for certain, but I think that at the time, the Mayans were considered to be like the most advanced, but they didn't know about the Olmecs yet, and they hadn't figured out that the Olmecs were actually the progenitors of the Maya, and that the Maya inherited most of their stuff, right? The Olmecs were the ones that were advanced, and nobody knows who they were or where they came from, or even what they really looked like, or what their technology was at all. Yeah,
Except that if they had the calendar, it was pretty
very advanced. Yeah, and anomalously advanced for otherwise, butt flaps and spears and pyramids culture. I mean,
that just doesn't fit together.
Butt flaps and
already.
spears and pyramids.
Yeah, it does not fit.
Yeah. We need to build a giant triangle so that we can kill people on top of it. It just doesn't make any sense. The Maya, all of the central, all of the Mexican, the Central, and the South American cultures that we know of, the pre-Columbian ones, were heavily involved in human sacrifice because they believed that was the only way to stop the world from ending again.
Right.
And that's because...
And if they were a culture that inherited their knowledge. If it was a legacy, if those buildings, and all of that construction was a legacy,
And the knowledge
and the
of
knowledge to build.
the previous destructions. See, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. The previous
Yeah.
destructions are what made them think that they needed to kill people because they thought that the gods wanted human
Right.
blood.
And as far as we know, the most recent previous destruction was 12,000 years ago.
Right.
So,
That's right. And the calendrical knowledge that's shown that is like inherent in the Mayan calendar, what we think of as the Mayan calendar, which was really the Olmecs, which may have not even been theirs, is so advanced that it doesn't make sense unless the people were okay. I'm trying to figure out how to describe this. Like, we know about the mystery of the maps, right?
Yeah.
Those are the people that needed that level of exactitude in terms of calendrical and
Right.
astronomical knowledge,
Yes.
right? You need to have a maritime culture that has circumnavigated the world and mapped everything, that knows how to make longitude,
right.
okay? That, which is a very difficult thing, you know? Take that, flat earthers. Longitude is hard. If it's flat, it shouldn't be. Anyway. Anyway, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can't go into here, but maybe we can in some future show that indicates that the level of advancement of the calendar that the Maya inherited from the Olmecs indicates a civilization that could do spherical trigonometry, that understood the actual formation of the solar system, not formation, but the way it actually is, that we go around the sun and so on and so forth. So I think the idea that there are some people who have like sort of put it together with the Mayan thing is interesting, because what I'm saying is that the Mayans aren't what they're putting it together with. The Mayans inherited what they got.
Right.
So what they might actually be connecting it with is this ancient unknown
far earlier culture.
That's right, exactly. That was a very long-winded, ridiculous way to get around to that point that I
Yeah,
was
but
trying to make.
that was great. But yeah, that would help, especially if the Olmecs were a culture that went far back enough to where they either were a legacy from those that survived the destruction
Yes.
12,000 years ago.
Right. That they were a result of the civilization of the civilizing attempts of the Viracochans.
Right.
Yes.
But still, on that point, like, I consider it highly probable that there was, whatever highly advanced culture built all that stuff in South America, like,
Yeah.
they would have traveled up here.
Exactly.
They would have explored all this.
Yes.
And they might have built a lot of stuff up here. They might have been, maybe they were outposts, at the far reaches of their
Right.
domain, but we couldn't know because of how much destruction there was here.
Right. Exactly. This was
according to
this was the epicenter of the destruction that caused the end of the Younger Dryas and the beginning of the Younger Dryas. So, two massive destructions that occurred within the space of 1,000 years that sent enormous waves of water across everything and burned everything flat and killed everybody, and yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And buried massive stone walls in Texas.
Where they later buried
care.
Genghis Khan. That reminds me
With a giant iron rocking chair.
That's right. And bullets and lead plates. Giant iron rocking chairs. It was Sasquatch, dude. The other thing I was thinking of was Alexander the Great. We also know that he sent enormous fleets out, that he did lots of exploring, that he went to the pyramids in Egypt. And that he also was buried somewhere and nobody's ever been able to find his body. Yeah, so Brett just pulled up one of the Olmec heads, and it definitely looks like a Chinese guy. This is what I'm saying. Like, I've tried to tell people that certain of the Olmec heads look like they're part of the Negro race.
God, that is beautiful.
Yeah, but other ones look Asian, what would be called Mongoloid. So there's the Negroid, Mongoloid, Caucasoid, and I can never remember what the other one was. But some of the Olmec heads definitely look Asian in construction. That actually might even be Indian. I don't know. Of course, India is in Asia. But yeah, I mean, like, kind kind of looks like he's got the little dot there on his forehead. It looks like Brahma, you know? So anyway, I think that it's, like you said, it's definitely possible that they built stuff up here and that either it was buried and destroyed and made completely unrecognizable by the massive destructions, or it just hasn't been recognized because nobody thinks that anybody built anything up here.
Right. But still, just let's see, within the last 10 years, nobody thought it was possible that there was a culture that existed 12,000 years ago that could build massive stone construction
Yeah, you're right.
sites. Okay.
Yeah.
And this debate about Rockwall has been going on for 125 years or whatever.
Right.
And so, of course, all of that time up until, like, what was it, 2011,
Yeah.
when they discovered Göbekli Tepe?
Well, Göbekli Tepe that was when it was first, when Klaus Schmidt started to publish it, but he actually started work there in like 94. They just kept it on the very, very
Right,
very
okay.
DL.
Well, when the world found out that,
Right.
that it was actually legitimately carbon dated to have been buried
Yeah. Yeah.
like 11,600 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't know when it was built, we know when it was buried.
Right. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
So it's like this is a new paradigm. And it's, I'm wondering, because, you know, all the
Göbekli Tepe's in Turkey. It has nothing to do with Texas.
Yeah.
Shut up, bro. They both start with a T. And Göbekli Tepe was made of T pillars, so
I'm
Case
wondering
closed.
if, like, any of these people, like, we're reading these articles that Patty sent us, and they all, I haven't looked at the dates on them, but they all look kind of old.
yeah. Well, the one that I read at the very beginning was March 1999.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still, before
Before it was published in the world. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if any of the people that are interested, like this guy John Lindsay, like, does he know about Göbekli Tepe? Probably. He's like,
Yeah.
interested in archaeology. So
Yeah.
now there's legitimate evidence that there were cultures that could build massive stone construction.
Right.
12,000 years ago.
Show me the potsherds. Oh, how about 50 giant circles of stones? How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. So you're basically saying that the paradigm needs to be updated, and it won't be.
Right.
It's not going to be.
Die.
Because,
I'm just saying there's precedent for it. And yeah, this is the quote unquote new world, but honestly, this part of the world has been here just as long as the old one.
it's not new.
It is not new. It's
Yeah, I mean, Plato talked about it in his Timaeus and Critias dialogues about Atlantis. He said that there was the continent that surrounded the ocean, which basically the Americas does. It goes from pole to pole, practically.
from pole to shining pole.
That's right. Ain't nothing here but from pole to shining pole. All right. I think that is it, ladies and gentlemen, for episode 58. Rockwall, the soon-to-be infamous Rockwall episode.
I think we need to change the name of the town to Man-Made Rockwall, Texas.
Man-made
Just-
Rockwall, Texas.
just trump
to
'em.
make them mad. All right, I want to thank everybody very much. I want to thank Kyle for all the production. Thank Kyle and Ty for all the music. I want to thank Brett, the watcher, for keeping us on the straight and narrow in terms of the truth. Thank you to Laura for all of the intros. And thanks to all of you listeners.
And thank
for
you,
always being
Patty.
there. Yes, and thank you, Patty, for the great interview and the continued conversations with you and the pictures and the articles and just, dang it. I can't wait to come up there and dig up pennies. So that's about it for this episode, guys. Good night, Adamu. Go dig up some rock walls. They're all man-made.